demonstration of creating this watercolor treatment here. And to do that, I am going to, there's a bunch of layers in here, aren't there? It's got a whole bunch of things to get that inking treatment. But it's not that hard. So I'm going to do this build over here on this image of my doggos. I've never done this treatment on this image, so we're going to see how it works. First thing I'm going to do is want to select the subject. I want to get rid of this background a little bit. I want to blur it, if nothing else, so that I'm not starting with an image that I'm watercoloring detail in places I would not paint detail into, if that makes any sense. I'm going to minimize this stuff by hitting select subject here, and if you can on your machine, update to Photoshop 2021. It is better than Photoshop 2020. All right, selected mask. Let's see how this works, though. I am still connected to Zoom, and this may be dogging my computer a bit, but we will see. So I'm going to get the selection tool, and I need to select some more parts here. And somehow I'm deselecting, so let's undo that. And this is taking a moment. And this is a brand new 2020 iMac. Top of the line $3,000 machine. And it is behaving like a dog. So I'm going to say that it is probably the fault of running Zoom and recording video and doing Photoshop. Because I closed everything else. Of course, I just did the opposite there. I wanted to deselect that. Try this again, kids. And I'm going to refine this selection. There we go. And now I can reselect this area. There we go. And I'm not going to be super worried about this. I'm just applying a blur to it. I want to blur this blanket out, though. I really don't want to have this blanket in here. So let's see what I can do along this edge here to kind of make this blanket all kind of go away. Survey says, give it a moment. There we go. It took forever, folks. This is crazy how long this is taking. All right. One of the things to do is I'm going to go refine hair. This is going to automatically try to refine the hair for me. Try to soften the things up. I just clicked it. It should be highlighted. I don't see. There we go. Didn't see it happening. I'm going to turn on the smart radius. And I'm going to increase the radius on this as well. This is also going to give me a softer edge. I'm not going to worry about it past that point. And I'm just going to go for this because this is a demo. So now I have the doggies selected. I really don't want to blur them. I want to blur the inverse. So I'm going to go to Command and the letter I, or Shift I, for inverse selection. And now I'm going to apply a blur to this, and I like a Gaussian. I'm a man of habits. I know what works really well for me. A little too much, huh? Now we have floating dogs. If you wanted to make this look more realistic, because depth of field has blur in an area, I could do this using a different blur, which they just came out with. Let's go to their blur gallery, and I want to say it's the field blur. And what this allows me to do is create areas of blur, right? It allows me to have an area where there's more blur and less blur. And I can, or tilt shift actually might be more strong on that. And these are all a little too much. I just want to make it go away a little bit, but not a ton. I'm liking that. All right, we're going to go with it. Because why not? Okay, and I don't want to ever make this selection again. So I'm going to go ahead and literally go up to, make this back to the inverse so I have the dog selected, not the background. Again, Command Shift I, and I'm going to go to selection, and I'm going to save that selection. This way I can come back to it at a later date. I can always go to load selection later and load that selection. All right, now I can deselect this thing. I have that blurred. Nice. Now I'm going to apply the watercolor filter to it. This is where we start with the watercolor treatment. And I'm going to go to the filter gallery. And I'm going to select, oops, that's the last thing I used. I want to go to watercolor. Come to me, watercolor. And somewhere around here there's a watercolor. I'm trying to remember where it is. There it is. And I don't like adding shadow intensity at this point. We're going to do that a little later on in a different step where we add a little more detail in. I like a whiter brush for watercolor. So in other words, a little less brush detail. We're fairly zoomed in on this. Actually, we're at 100%. And sometimes I like sponge better for watercolor. Oops, that's not maybe not sponge. I'm going to try a bunch of different things here. And again, it's about finding the effect that really makes you happy. What I think it's going to be maybe paint tops. And maybe go for a bigger brush size. A little too blurry, but I like it. It's very watercolory. Yeah, it's almost more watercolory than watercolor. We're going to keep this one, and I think we can actually stack these, if I'm not mistaken. Let's add another one. And change paint jobs here to watercolor. So I'm stacking filters inside of here. And let's give this less. And I'm liking this. I'm liking this a lot more than what I've done in the past. So experimentation, folks. Play around. That's feeling pretty good. Let's add a little more texture to this. That's feeling kind of watercolory. I'm liking that. And the shadow intensity is kind of like the outline. Gives you a little more detail, but I'd like to come back with that later. So I am feeling really good about that. So here's the watercolor alone. Oops, there it is. There's the watercolor alone. And then I'm going to add the paint daubs to it. And I feel that even feels more watercolory. Let's see if I swap their order. If that changes the look and feel. It does change the look and feel. I liked it better the other way with the paint daubs coming after watercolor. I feel it's a little too mushy feeling right now. That feels like a good watercolor painting to me, so I'm liking that. I'm going to go with it. So there you go. You can stack filter effects in there, something you may not have known. That's feeling very watercolory. And I like that. I'm going to add a layer mask to this, though. Because we're going to want to make this kind of appear more than anything, right? So we're going to do that here. And to add a layer mask, you just add this layer mask here, and nothing is selected, so it came up in totally white. And we're going to come back to this in a moment because I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to open up one, and I'm going to select create a new document. I need to make a custom brush. I don't have one on this computer yet. And I'm going to make a watercolor brush. And to do that, I'm going to take this new document, and I'm going to go to Filter, and I want to say it's stylized, maybe. Does he remember? No. Maybe render. Here we go. It's render. And there's clouds, and then there's difference clouds, and I'm going to go to difference clouds. And somehow I am in yellow. This needs to be black and white. So I'm going to select this down here, so I'm back to black and white. And retry these again. Oh, it's so fun flying without a net. Render. So clouds, and they look a little different. This is clouds, and this is difference clouds. And I think I like clouds better. I think difference clouds are less contrasty. I take that back. That's more contrasty. Let's go for the first one. I like clouds. And I'm going to make a brush out of this. So that it has some kind of contour to it, and it feels random, and it feels like it's coming on in different strengths. Because that's what watercolor kind of does. I'm going to go over here to my quick selection tool, or maybe even to my, I'm just going to go over here to this, and I'm just going to pick an area where I want an area not of just consistency, but I want an area of turbulence and drama. I'm going to look at this, and I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm feeling like I like kind of this because it feels like it has a lot of change to it. I could pick a part now. And the darker something is, the less it's going to show through. The lighter something is, the more it's going to show through. As a brush, it's kind of like a mask. So let's look at this. I am feeling like I like this area. Notice I'm making a random kind of a shape for the brush. Lovely. I could also make my selection using the magic wand tool and just picking an area. That kind of works. I'm going to go back to my quick selection tool and pick an area, and I'm liking this one here. It feels like a brush stroke a little bit. There you go. Again, I could have made this bigger. Let's make it bigger. More variation. Beauteous. I don't like having 2 white dots in there, but we're going to try it. And then here I'm going to go to Edit and define brush preset. And this is going to be sample brush, and I'm going to call this Watercolor. So now I have a watercolor brush I can use. Yes, I do. Nice. All right, I'm going to go back over here now to the doggos, and this brush is probably a good size. We're going to see, and I still have that brush loaded. I'm going to change this treatment, this white mask, to be a dark mask. So I'm just going to go over here and fill it. Oops, there you go. Fill it with black. So it's all white now, right? It's paper white. And now you know me, I like everything very, very light. I'm going to go to 15 here. And I'm going to change my flow to, I don't know, 60 or 70%. I keep smoothing at its defaults, and I'm going to just start to paint through where I think the dogs are. And I need to have black in my brush. This might be a little too little going on. I'm painting over here with white. Oops, I'm painting black on black. That's the problem, folks. I'm painting white on black now. Here we go. I am not feeling this brush at all. Oh my gosh, it has no soft edges. Oh, I forgot a step. Don't you love when I do this? All right, let's back that up. Go back over here. And with the selection still made, let's back up this a step. Aha. I forgot to feather it. I got to go to select feather. Select modify feather. And let's give this at least 15 pixels of feather. Oh, heck, it's a pretty big brush. Let's go to 25 pixels of feather. And now I'm going to redefine that brush. Define brush preset. And there you go. And notice how nice and feathery it is here. I'm going to call this feather or brush watercolor. For real. Yeah, I make annoying names and you're welcome. Now this is going to work so much more nicely. And I can make this brush smaller and bigger too. So I'm thinking I like this. I think that I want to change my brush size. I can scale this brush. Too small. I'll think of a good watercolor size. I'm liking that better. And notice I'm dabbing this on. And I'm going to grab a different input device. I'm using a trackball there, but I'm going to go to my pencil. And I'm going to start dabbing dogs through. I'm just starting to discover where my dogs are. And I can change the brush size as well. I'm going to make this a bigger brush here in a minute so I can discover more dog. Notice how quickly these numbers jump. There's the blanket. Here's another dog face somewhere over here. And so what I'm doing is I'm selectively bringing the transparency through because that's what watercolor is. It's the building up of color. If you've never done a watercolor class, you're building up the image. It is very different to painting with acrylics or oils. Oils is actually kind of similar. So in oils, the paint stays live for a long time. Now, I've got a lot of the same size brush going on here, and that's not going to be the best. So I'm going to start varying a bit like the last couple of snaps, especially that one right there. All right, a little too close to the edge for my liking. I'm going to vary the brush size again. From 500, not to 4,000, but to 700. Notice how quick that jumps. I mean, literally. I'm going to go to 750. There you go. Sometimes you got to type them in. And a little bit bigger. And so we're revealing those watercolor strokes. Until I get enough of this stuff away, it's just going to feel like we're looking through a cloud. But once I get enough of this done, all that tapping is my pen tablet. Notice I'm tapping and I'm not swiping. If I was swiping, I wouldn't be getting these undulations of irregularity in the application of the transparency, or in this case, the revealing of the color, right? I want that to be irregular. The minute I start swiping like this, I'll go ahead and do it. I may as well just use any brush, taking away the magic of this brush. And again, I'm working on the same size over and over right now, so I'm probably going to vary that in a minute here. Notice though that I'm building this effect. And I'm trying to be aware of what, if I was actually painting, what would I actually want to reveal here? How would I show this? All right. And I'm going to get a little smaller brush now. We're at 500 before. Let's go to 375-ish. 380 works, 350 works. And I want to put in more smaller details, punching through in a few spots. And again, I am tap, tap, tapping. If you were using your trackpad, you would be click, click, clicking. If you were using a mouse, you would be click, click, clicking. I am a big fan of, you buy a computer, that's one step. Your input device, how you interface with your computer is so important. And I have a trackball, so when I edit video, a trackball is, oh my gosh, the best. Or for long documents in InDesign. Being able to get from page to page or down a timeline if you're doing animation or video. It is really important to be able to work with your interface for your computer in different ways. I also have a pen tablet. And no, I don't have one with a screen you draw on. Quite frankly, my iMac, like I said, it's a new one here. It's got a kick-ass 5K display. Why would I want to look at a low-resolution image on something? I could have spent more on this tablet and gotten one with a little screen, but I don't see why. That's looking pretty nice. I'm going to go back to the bigger one now. And I might even go back big, big. Oops, oops. Brushes again. I'm going to just go back big, big. Let's go over 1,000 this time. 1,040. And I'm just going to change the opacity to 20. I want this to happen in a few less clicks. Now notice I'm not doing big giant changes, right? But you can see now as I stamp this in, I'm stamping in more intensity in fewer clicks. And I'm really still only revealing little cloud shapes. I mean, let's take a look at what this, if you take a look at the icon here of what this mask looks like, I'm literally just revealing this in a cloud. Where I want more color, I am just, and my pen is pressure sensitive, so I'm pressing harder as well. If you're clicking at home with a mouse or something, you won't have to worry about that. If I tap lightly, it's one thing. If I tap really hard, it's coming through a lot more. Look at this a little more clear here around his nose and his paw. And I think it's looking really, really beautiful. Nice puppy pick. I might add a little more detail down here just to kind of round it out and fill it out. I'm going to go back on this. I'm going to go back to about 10 or 11% for these corners, right? I don't want them to be white, white. I want them to have just a little feel going for them. It's looking pretty sweet. All right. Now I want to bring out some of these edges. So this is feeling very watercolory to me. I think we've got a nice effect going. Um, and that's the reason why we have the white background, is so that we have the paper white behind it, right? So we're not looking at watercolor over the other image or watercolor over transparency. This is not how the image looks. Take a look at that. Kind of crazy. Um, so there we go. Now I want to add in some pen lines. I'm going to make another copy of this layer. Command J. And there's a bunch of ways I could do this. I'm going to drag this above everybody so we're looking at the full picture again. Oops. My bad. Select the layer, then move it, Colorado. There we go. There's a lot of things I can do. I'm going to try something I haven't done before, but I think might work really well. It worked well in the cartoon demo. And that is, let's try a couple of things. I'm going to go back to my filter gallery. And I'm going to try that pen and ink on this. And why do I have nothing? I have the wrong layer selected, Colorado. Boom. No, I don't. There must be some kind of selection going on here. I'm going to make sure everything is deselected. Command D. Now I'm going to go to my filter gallery. It's showing me nothing. Oh, it's just taking it forever. I'm going to garbage can these two filters that are in here because we're done with this. Suppose I could have just turned them off. It's not letting me turn one off. You can only garbage can one at a time. I'm going to go to poster edges. There we go. I don't want a whole lot of edge thickness. I like the edges kind of thin because I want to make this look like it's a pen and ink drawing. Excuse me. Edge intensity. Let's see what we have here. I want some more edges than that. I'm not sure I care about posterization. Let's see what this does. This is looking kind of cool. We're going to try this. So that's our picture. We're going to do an overlay on this. We're going to go through these different blending modes. I'm looking at. Keep in mind that you can change the fill. The fill kind of is different than opacity in that it leaves all the lights and the darks. It's adding kind of a posterization I don't like. I don't like what I've done to this layer. But that's multiply. Let's try this different ways. Here's overlay, the traditional way to apply it. And I'm feeling way too posterized here. Let's try, instead of fill opacity, they are different substantially. I'm still feeling the same thing, so I'm feeling that that's coming through. Let's do something different to this layer. All right. Let's go back to when we created that layer, right? Layer order, there's our new layer on top. So you see how I didn't have to recreate everything. I just used my history palette to navigate through time to come back and revisit this. Now another thing I have never tried, but I'm going to try it with this one. So I'm going to go to filter and other and high pass. And high pass is a great way of finding edges and details for things. And I think I might paint some of this in. So now I have a high pass filter. And I'm going to go to overlay on this. Whoopsie, let's zoom in. It's kind of feeling edgy, but it's not. Okay, I want to change this high pass filter, but I can't. And I don't think there's a high pass filter that's actually adjustable. So I'm going to go backwards in time. And I'm going to make this a smart layer. Control click on it. control click on it. So much easier to do with not my pen. There is an input device for every reason. I'm going to convert it to a smart object so that my filters should be adjustable later. I'm not sure if these old legacy filters like high pass are going to do that. I should be able to double click this later and then be able to edit that. I'm wanting more edges. Let's do that. I can always paint this in, folks. I can always just paint in what I want. Let's see what that does. Yes, it's a smart filter now. Ha-ha! Huzzah! So I can keep changing this. That's the beauty of it. So now I'm going to go back to overlay. Ooh, I'm liking what that's doing. You guys see how that's bringing in just a little bit of detail? So it's a little less painterly, but here's the beauty of it. I can bring this in where I want to. Let's create a layer mask. I'm going to get a regular brush. Actually, I'll use this brush. This will be really cool. And I like the detail. Let's go back to our high pass filter. Give it even more detail. Here's the beauty of doing a smart object. It's making it feel really illustrated, which is kind of cool, but it doesn't feel as watercolor as I kind of wanted. You can see that, how it's getting rid of some of that watercolor blurry effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this stuff in, or paint it out, really. I'm just going to paint it out. I'm going to zoom in, or zoom out. And using the same brush, except I think I'm going to swirl it this time, just to be a little quicker. I have a white one here, so black will paint things out of this. And let's go ahead and change this to, I don't know, 25 or 30. Well, my meeting is over there. So if you're wondering where I went, that's where I'm at. What, 25%? I'm going to paint out. Actually, I'm going to go even higher because this is taking me forever. I'm going to paint out a lot of this detail I don't want. I want it to be watercolory in some spots, like in their dog bodies, and in the background especially, right? It's getting rid of all of the dreaminess by making it too much detail. Let's see what this is still doing. It's adding a little contrasty snap. It's adding a little detail where I want it. Still a little too much here, right? Erase it there, soften it here. Now again, I'm not really erasing it completely, I'm just softening it. Because I still am at only 70%. I'm just doing it a lot faster than I was before. I think that looks really nice. Let's see what the difference is. And again, art is about subtleties, right? Nice. All right, now let's say I wanted to do a really nice pen and ink outline. That's a neat little piece of detail. One final thing I can do to this. Let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to copy this again. Now let me label this, right? This is a little detail. I can paint more detail back in. That's what it is. It's really detail. I want to create an outline here, so I'm going to select the bottom layer again, Command J to duplicate it, and I'm going to rename that, and I'm going to call this one outline. I am going to make an outline for you. This one's going to actually be a group. I'm going to drag this to the top. And there it is. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer one more time. I need two of them. I have an outline copy. And I'm going to make this top one an inverse color-wise, Command I. So it's opposite color. And then I'm going to change the overlay to color dodge. Oops, not screen, color dodge Colorado. And that made everything white. Which you say, what's the usefulness of that? Well, hold on a moment. Here comes the magic. Filter, blur. And I like a Gaussian blur. I'm a Gaussian blur guy. And oh, look, here are just edges. So another way to get edges. And I don't want a whole lot of detail. Again, I just want the edges. I want to make them feel like inked edges. And you know, I probably should have sucked the color out of all of these. Well, let's go ahead and do this anyhow. We'll just do it afterwards with another filter. Blur, Gaussian, and let's just pick one. You don't want to go too far. going to bring way too much information in. I'm just looking to add a little ink edges like as if I inked it in. I'm just going to go with the minimal. The minimal I can get away with. These look like good inky edges. Okay, and now these should have been in black and white. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a group out of these two so that I'm only working within the group. Command G is for grouping them, and now I can open that group and work within the group. And inside of that group, on this one, I'm going to go on top of that one, I want to add, actually on top of the group, I'm going to add a filter. And it's just a black and white filter. I'll probably end up doing levels as well. So now it's just black and white lines. I just want this to apply. It's applied actually to everything underneath here. If you look at this, it's actually applied to the watercolor underneath it, and that's not what I want to do. So to make a smart filter, one of these filters from down here, applied just to the layers underneath, I am going to hit Command and hover, or Option and hover, and you see how my cursor, if I hover right in the line between them, turns to this. It's only going to apply to the layer right underneath it. So I'm going to click, oops, and you'll see that change. So now black and white only applies to the layer underneath it. I can still see the color one, so I need to duplicate this layer and do that one more time. And now I'm going to take this layer and drag it down on top of the other one, so it's affecting that color one. Now I have two black and whites. If I had made this black and white beforehand, I would have done that. Okay. So now I have this black and white outline that I have. Thank you very much. And now let's go to group. And I want to, ooh, look at that. See how that's looking like it is just a pen outlines. And again, I can paint these in. I don't want to use any of these. Nope, they're darkens. It's also darkening my color a little bit. Winner, chicken dinner for me today. All right, and again, I have too much detail in places I would not have painted it in, right? So, that said, another layer mask, folks. Here we go. We're going to layer mask that group. And with black, I can paint out anything I don't want. Again, I'm still using the same brush. This brush seems a little big to me at the moment. I'm going to go a little smaller. In the 500 to 600 range, that's a good size. And now I'm going to start painting this stuff out. I don't want detail in these parts. I wouldn't have gone through with the pen and done that. I wouldn't have gone through with the pen and done that either. I might have done some details on the face. But I definitely would have painted the background in, right? I wouldn't have applied detail to the background. No way, Jose. Let's get rid of all of that. That's something I wouldn't have done. Maybe a little bit right around the foot. And some of this you might have kept. This is all artistic license, right? Artistic license. I'm just trying to keep the edges that I think I would have colored in. And you know, if you change your mind about something and you want to paint it back in, you literally can hit the X key and that'll swap the colors in the register, and then you can paint detail back in if you think you might have used it there. Swap again, paint it back out. Change the transparency of it maybe, right? Maybe I don't want to paint out as much. So this looks like a little pen and ink you would have added right at the end of your watercolor. That little kicker. And I'm seeing places I want to paint it out. I don't want it here because I wouldn't have spent the time doing that. Thinking about how would I have worked. And again, I'm slightening these up by painting them out a little bit. But you can still see there's a major little bit of difference. And again, life is about subtleties, right? So if I had just done the watercolor, here's that. If I had done the watercolor with the outline, and then the watercolor with the outline and a little more detail. You can just see these things brought in its subtleties. I'm liking without the details. I should name this group, right? Edges. There you go. So that is my take on the watercolor treatment. I think that looks lovely. So let's go ahead and do the before the original image. Oopsie. And then the original image with a watercolor treatment, and then the original image with all the other little details that make it kick. Hopefully you found this really useful. And again, it's a living document. I can keep going back in here and working it. That's art. Anyhow, hopefully you enjoyed this demonstration. I enjoyed making it because it's got the subject, my two favorite subjects, my doggies. I probably would have done a little less detail right in there. And again, it's just about what you see and what you want to do, right? I'm just lightening these details a little bit. There you go. A little too dark in here. You see how dark that is? That's not real for me, and that might be coming from a different layer, I think. Yes, it is. So I'm going to go to this one here. And I am making sure I select the right dang thing and painting that out right there. Anyhow, thanks for watching.